Marvel's The Rise of Ultraman began its run in September of 2020. A retelling of Ultraman 1966, the story brings the titular character into modern times as part of Tsuburaya's globalization initiative. While there are many similarities between Tsuburaya's original vision and the comic, there are significant changes to the hero's origin and his purpose. The first of these changes starts with Hayata's role at the start of the comic. In Ultraman 1966, Shin Hayata was already a member of the Science Special Search Party. This SSSP was created to search into anomalies of science, often manifesting as alien or kaiju threats to humanity. It is as part of this organization that Hayata crashes into Ultraman's transportation sphere, only to survive because Ultraman offers his life force through a merge. This merge would bring Hayata back to life, with the ability to transform into Ultraman should humanity need his protection. No one in the SSSP witnessed this event, and Hayata would work throughout the series to keep his connection hidden. The Rise of Ultraman changes this origin entirely. In Marvel's Ultraman, Hayata begins with no affiliation with the SSSP, or as it is called in this universe, the United Science Patrol. While the SSSP was a known and publicly funded part of the world, the USP is a hidden organization that has kept the reality of kaiju hidden from humanity. As children, Hayata and a new take on Fuji were exposed to a kaiju threat, and ever since then vowed to become USP members. Fuji becomes a member, but Hayata is rejected and instead builds his own detectors to investigate the kaiju. Captain Muramatsu remains similar to his original counterpart, though a little more trigger-happy. While Hayata and Fuji are out to dinner, Muramatsu calls Fuji to deploy for an emergency, and Hayata is dragged along. This emergency ends up being Ultraman's transport sphere, which the USP shot down. Under pressure from Muramatsu, Hayata fires an Ultraman and a mental link is established between the two. Ultraman goes on to explain that kaiju are made from the negative energy of others, and that his species has overcome those energies. As an Ultra, it is his duty to assist planets from creating too many kaiju before the inhabitants wipe themselves out, and to intervene if they are incapable of doing so. Ultraman, damaged from the crash and the shot, tells Hayata he can survive if they merge. Initially, Ultraman wants to completely take over Hayata's body, believing humans to be one of the species incapable of overcoming their own kaiju crisis. However, Hayata convinces Ultraman that there is still hope in humanity, and Ultraman agrees to leave Hayata in control. Later, an encounter with the kaiju officially lands Hayata a spot in the USP. However, the USP being present during both the merge and the encounter mean that more than a few people know Hayata is Ultraman. The next big departure from the original 1966 series is the reason Ultraman must fight the kaiju. As mentioned earlier, kaiju are created and drawn to the negative energies of people. This means until a species has elevated to a status like the Ultras, the threat will always remain. While the 1966 series sometimes had creatures created by man or through the manifestation of ancient folklore, most of the kaiju were either unrelated phenomena or direct attacks from alien species. Marvel's Ultraman opts to make the monsters entirely product of emotion, and therefore aliens take a step back. This means the reason the Ultra species fights is less to police the galaxy against alien criminals and kaiju, and more to protect species from themselves. This is where the story throws its first twist. If all kaiju are made from emotion, then it would make little sense that the USP has been able to keep their existence secret. Surely at some point the negative energy would have created an undeniable event. The story explains that the USP, unknown to even most of its own members, has been teleporting the monsters away to another dimension. The main defense was never to defeat the kaiju, but instead to avoid them. Unfortunately, this dimension is not an infinite space. Cracks in its barrier are what alerted Ultraman to Earth in the first place, and if the kaiju limbo, as it's called, was ever to burst, humanity would be doomed. To alleviate this, Ultraman and Hayata decide that the best course of action is to purposefully destroy part of the barrier to let kaiju out at various locations around the world. This will allow them to defeat them on more manageable terms. Another key aspect of this universe is that kaiju imprint and want to attack the first thing they see upon exit, meaning that Ultraman willingly set himself as the primary target for all the kaiju. While there are a few more interesting comparisons between the two origins, such as Bemular being the first main kaiju in both series, nothing is quite as significant as the differences between the SSSP and USP, Hayata, and the reason the Ultras fight. An additional comic at the end of the first volume implies that some higher power, potentially alien, is causing the crisis, but until that is revealed, Marvel's Ultraman focuses more on the emotions and actions of humanity, while Ultraman 1966 focuses on emotions and actions against humanity.